Hello and welcome again to this edition of Capitol Report here on WCMU Public Television. I'm David Nicholas, pleased to welcome back State Senator Ken Horn of Frankenmuth. The Republican served 3 terms in the 94th District in the House and now is in his 2nd term in the Senate's 32nd District. Good to see you again, sir.
It was great to visit with you.
Work is underway in the early stages of the governor's fiscal 2021 budget proposal. Your early take on the priorities and the work that is underway?
Well, I'm responsible for economic development, so we're working with the governor on a Reconnect program, and so I have a watchful eye on our skilled trades training fund. Still curious about what Pure Michigan is going to look like in the next budget. Those items were all vetoed in the past budget. So the one thing we're not seeing is any kind of a number for local roads, and so we're kind of trying to see how all that fits in.
The bonds for roads plan that then has been put forward by the governor, how much impact would you see in your district, or then that might lead right to that question of the local level and the responsibility they might have to undergo here?
The bonding comes from the state trunk line fund, and it only deals with state trunk lines. So for the Great Lakes Bay region, which is Isabella, Saginaw Bay, Midland counties, precisely $0 will be spent on roads in this region, new dollars. So we'll see some construction that's been in the works on I-75 by Holland Road, heading up to the Zilwaukee Bridge. People will see that construction, but in terms of the new funding, we will see none of it here at all, primarily be in Southeast Michigan. The problem that we have is that in Michigan, we know that 19% of state trunk lines are in critical condition, but 42% of local roads are in critical condition, and this does nothing to address local roads. So cities and counties are kind of scratching their heads at this year's budget.
We also have heard the term roads of economic importance since the governor's election. The plans that have been put in place, the money that has been approved even in the final years and working forward from the last portion of the Snyder administration, did these plans identify a wider what's the word I'm looking for? A wider swath of the roads, not necessarily limiting those to the trunk lines. What were or what are those plans where we have money set aside waiting for the work to be done?
Well, the Act 51, which is what funds our local and state roads, very specifically lays out the percentage of dollars that raised at the gas pump, how much will go to state trunk lines, how much will go to county, how much will go to cities. That's prescribed in that law. When we added $1.2 billion in 2015, we pretty much followed that formula. We put a little heavier emphasis on local roads. Every road can be an economic road. You can make an argument. We need to get people back and forth to work. We need to move freight. So this isn't just about state trunk lines. You know, if we're dealing with Dixie Highway, which I found some dollars to do between I-75 and Junction Road heading into Frankenmuth, those businesses wrote letters of support, and we did matching funds for an economic development grant through the U.S. Department of Transportation. So they have funds set aside specifically for economic development. So they recognize that local roads can play a significant role in economic development as well. So I'm not sure what the title is for the state trunk lines. We just know that really you need to solve the problems where they exist. And if state trunk lines are in bad shape and they need to be reconstructed, they certainly, that's where you're going to focus your energies. Our concern is that it's the local roads that are in worse shape than the state trunk lines, and we wish that the focus would be on those.
So for the plans that have been put in place, how far in advance was money authorized? That is to say, as the governor has now gone down the road towards paying for the large source of revenue from the bonds, does that override, supersede, add on to the plans that have already been in place, assuming that the work in the past legislature was at least carrying forward into this upcoming construction season here in 2020?
Yeah, Michigan Department of Transportation does a really good job of projecting into the future, and every year I see a full map on my conference room desk that lays out the next 5 years. So this is when we're going to begin planning, engineering, when we begin construction, and here's where it finishes, and they're really focusing on maintenance after that, so that we don't have to do those roads over again. So the new dollars in terms of state trunk lines will just be an add-on. They will accelerate current existing programs, or they will add brand new ones. But the ones that have already been in the works are going to be finished.
Knowing that that bill is coming now for the bonds down here, does that change any of the budget work being done now to address this, or is basically now, okay, what you've done, now we've got the big infusion of cash, and that's it?
Well, what we're doing because the governor is laid off of local roads, I'm working with State Representative Mike Mueller to change the public formula for road spending. We would flip the formula on its head and focus more on county and city roads, provide less to state trunk lines because they're borrowing money for that. It just seems to me that if you have an opening over here, that it could loosen up some dollars over on this side as well. And then, 39% would go to local roads, county roads. 39 would go to city roads, and then the remainder would go to state trunk lines, knowing that they've already got funding available to them. So we still have to get that bill passed, but the point is that we are letting the world know that we're paying attention.
Workforce. This has been a question that, regardless of where our guests have come from in the central and northern part of the state, and looking at the positive impact of having money authorized to do work on the roads, especially as the economy has improved in the state, but there's still the question of the workforce and the available crews to get this done.
It is a concern to us, and if we send our big crews out on the state highways, do we have enough? If we have out-of-state construction companies, will they go on strike again this year? Do we have enough people? Throwing money at a problem, it doesn't solve the problem. There has to be an entire plan, which we haven't seen yet. What we're concerned with in the legislature, and we've had work groups dealing with this, is that if you spend $2.5 billion, if you spend $5 billion, $10 billion on a segment of road, what happens to labor cost? What happens to material cost? And are we fixing the same amount of roads for more money instead of fixing more roads? These are legitimate questions that have to be asked. And as we asked them last year, it kind of threw a monkey wrench in the financing plans, and that 45% gas tax never caught fire.
The governor also made education investment a focal issue in the state of the state and in the budget that's been proposed. How will this translate to the schools that are in your Senate district? And we can then extend that, but to higher ed, but at least starting with the local schools and the funding there.
What we learned, especially with the last near depression that we had at Michigan, single state, huge recession, when we lost all our manufacturing jobs and almost 1 million people since 2005, that school aid fund is a function of the economy, not of the legislature. As Michigan's economy begins to recover and we begin to get some of those manufacturing jobs, we're putting people back to work, their paychecks are bigger, we're starting to see some money loosen up for education. I'm all for adding dollars to education, but we need to really do it smartly. What we need to do is look at how we can get young people prepared through career exploration into meaningful, significant jobs in the future. The committee that I vice chair in the education committee is now called Education and Career Readiness, because we know you need post-secondary, but we're really focused on the career, not just on sending kids to college just for the sake of doing that. And so Central Michigan University plays a big part, especially in our region, looking at a medical school with residents in Saginaw. Young people are beginning to see there's an opportunity there in medicine so that they can start focusing on something very specific. We know the trades are so important.
Are we still facing the shortage?
We are, yeah.
Very much so.
There's a hot sheet, and I don't think there's an industry, public or private, that isn't facing a shortage. We have a shortage of truck drivers. We have a shortage of electricians and skilled tradespeople. And then we have a shortage of engineers, and businesses are trying to kind of fix this problem themselves. My son, for example, that he graduated a year ago with electrical engineering degree. He spent 2 years as an apprentice at Next Year because they snagged him up. They wanted to get him early. They're looking for people. They're recruiting them. But in the public sector, we're seeing a shortage of teachers, police officers, firefighters. We're making these jobs harder and harder by mandates. And people are frustrated with it. Teachers are telling young people not to go into teaching profession anymore. It's just too frustrating. Testing and reporting and curriculum mandates. They can't hardly teach anymore. So there's a number of things that we need to do, including peeling back the layers of mandates on the public sector, on teachers, for example. In the private sector, it is no different.
With that focus also on higher education, your role as the Appropriations Subcommittee on the University and Community Colleges, and you mentioned Central Michigan University, certainly waiting to see how the budget is resolved. Saginaw Valley State in your district that has gone through some expansion. Do you see then at, whether we're talking the four-year schools or the community college programs, that they are moving quickly enough to adapt to the changing needs of the economy, so that when you talk about the career readiness focus that you did, that these schools are going to be prepared or getting themselves more quickly prepared to meet where those real needs are for the students coming in?
I think they are, and it's very encouraging. You see, for example, CMU with their residency program in Saginaw, where the young people are taking classes up here in Mount Pleasant. They're doing their residency in Saginaw. We're seeing a shift. We're seeing more psychiatric students, for example, signing up and becoming residents. And this was springboarded off of our issue with the Caro Center, that dealt directly with mental health. And so we're seeing needs, and universities are stepping up to the plate. Colleges are, because of their 2 years degree and with their partnership, in terms of corporate services, Fast Start program, for example, at Delta College, an industry sees people, baby boomers, retiring at a very fast rate. They see a gap in the future, so 10 years down the road, where they're going to see a shortage. They begin planning now and build curriculums right away. So the colleges and universities are becoming more nimble. What we need to do is worry less about tuition restraint. We need to allow universities to hire the best professors, to buy the best lab equipment, to be the best at what they do, and then inspire kids to come in and teach them that there's a value in whatever it is that they're learning.
We talked then and touched on the issue of the labor market and the workforce. Then are we seeing, do we have enough people, or are we still running behind because of that population loss, enough of these young people coming in, regardless of what career path they're going to take or any sense of career readiness? Do we even have enough people then to fuel where these shortages are coming from? And if not, how can the state, what would the state be doing to attract maybe some people to come back home to Michigan?
What Michigan is facing, we have the old axiom, when the world catches a cold, Michigan gets pneumonia. And that's what we went through in 2007, 8, 9. But we're not alone in this. The entire country, the entire world is facing this, facing a shortage of workers. But what Michigan has going for it too is that you have some really good people, really smart people that are working this economic development circle. And that is that places, cities need businesses. Businesses need people. And people need places. And so as we get jobs, we build a workforce, and we have people. They need vibrant, energetic cities to live in, communities to live in. And what we're going to see this summer when we have our Council of State Governments conference in Detroit, we're going to see Midtown and downtown. Shops and retail stores, bars, restaurants, they can't build housing fast enough, condominiums and apartments. They are about 5,000 short in Midtown right now because young people, instead of going to Chicago, are coming to Detroit. So we're beginning to see that, and they're bringing their talent with them. And so as we, at the very time we need their talent, because we're building cars, we melt steel, we stamp metal, but there's computers in these cars that are becoming smarter and smarter and smarter. And we need young people to be able to put that all together. And so it's happening right now in the state of Michigan, not as fast as I'd like it to be, but I think that we need somewhere between 750,000 and 1 million people to migrate back to Michigan, and we need talented people so that they come here and they bring their experiences with them.
When we look then also to that broader area, the Talent and Economic Development and MEDC Committee, what would be a reasonable timeline? I mean, we lost those folks in a pretty short span of time because things had gotten as bad as they did. Is there any way to project how long, when you say it's not moving as quickly as you'd like to see it?
Well, I'd like to.
They run models that say that if we can get these people back, or 75% of these people back by year X, then we'll be.
We are already testing in different places in the world autonomous vehicles that have no steering wheels, they got no pedals, they've got no brakes. We need people right now to be engineering, the software engineering, all of the components that need to be put into place. We need to have more satellites in the air. We're talking about Launch Michigan, which would send rocket ships north of the 45th parallel here in Michigan, and put satellites into place for a robust cloud system, because once these cars don't have steering wheels and they're connected to each other, the roads, to buildings, you can't unconnect them even for a moment. So this really has to be a powerful 5G system that we have. And so we need people right now to do the brainstorming on this, the engineering on this, and we're starting to get them. And so I think that as we're growing this economy, we just need to be able to build housing fast enough. We have a problem now with workforce housing. This isn't just downtown cities. Traverse City, with all its tourism economy, is finding a shortage of housing for its workforce. So we need to start building, and so now we need builders. We need people going in the trades, and so see how this cycle builds on itself. And so the more we put into workforce development, into training, into education, career exploration as early as middle school, robust consulting, in high school, getting kids into genres. So they don't have to pick their career; they just have to have an idea what they want to do for a living, what they enjoy, what they have passion for. And then our colleges and universities have to continue to step up their game, which they seem to be doing.
Do these new economic directions at all, or if we think of even something as large as this potential initiative into space, can these or other businesses have potentially the same effect that the auto industry did, where, and obviously in a district like yours where there was a main manufacturing hub in and around Saginaw, but if we look at a lot of these areas in the central and northern part of the state, no, they didn't have the main manufacturing plants, but they had the small parts suppliers. Mm-hmm. Is there going to be a market likely that can fuel these into that small business economy, even if we still have a shift into the large plants that we had that once made all the cars, maybe now are making something different, or there's fewer of them while we build something else? Will we see enough spillover into small business to supply those things, support those things, and provide that complementary economy?
We will, and that's why I teamed up with the aerospace industry to put them together with our advanced automotive research community because of the crossover in technologies. This is all about mobility now. And so we're getting people in industries that are expanding. Even the defense industry, can be part of this in terms of mobility with some of the best minds working on this. And then we have a robust, I think broadband and for data around the state of Michigan. Then there isn't a part of Michigan that can't participate in this new economy.
Energy sector, technology certainly, but we've seen ventures into, we've seen areas that are now being devoted to the wind farms. There was obviously a lot of move by Dow for a time into solar and different forms of batteries and so forth. What else in terms of the potential energy sector? That's another one of the committee positions that you have. What are we seeing in terms of development there?
The utilities, each of the large utilities and many of our co-ops and municipal energy suppliers are making a commitment to go emission-free, to really get into renewables, and it's the reduced price of solar that is attracting utility-grade solar farms in Michigan as well. And we're still building turbines, but communities have, I think we've saturated all of the low-hanging fruit in terms of communities that want turbines, and so now there's a lot of folks that they're taking a look at it, but people don't want these big turbines, but they may want the solar panels, and because they're lower, they're less intrusive to a community, and there's some real benefits to that. And so we're going to see a future that is more and more heavily dependent on renewables. The portfolio for solar, wind, biofuels are going to grow, and in the reduction, of course, we're going to be getting out of coal altogether in Michigan, and natural gas will always have a big role in base load energy because of the cheap cost of it.
Do we look at the level of taxation or the level of regulation when it comes to any of these potential areas of economic development? You mentioned it earlier when it came to some of the barriers of people career choices, whether it be teaching or other fields. What about when we talk about these economic engines? Do we still have any addressing that needs to be done of levels of taxes in the state, levels of regulation, any of that? Red tape, I guess, would be the broad term for it, in terms of bringing business here, keeping business here, allowing business to thrive as much as it possibly can.
Well, we've come a long way since 2011, where we cut 11,000 unnecessary rules and regulations that kind of cleaned up the system. We went from one of the most confusing taxes, the Michigan business tax, and its 22% surcharge. We eliminated that. We created the corporate income tax, a simple 6% income tax on businesses. So I think it's very easy to understand. It's simple. We've got a relatively low personal income tax, but I think would be lower flat income tax. We went from the bottom 10% in terms of business friendly to the top 10 or near top 10 in most categories, but there are still some tools that we could examine. The Good Jobs for Michigan package that I have written brought us the Jeep plant, 6,000 person Jeep plant or car plant, the first one in 15 years in the state of Michigan, brand new. We've added a ton of jobs and a lot of capital investment in Michigan because of that one idea. And so, sensible, accountable, transparent ideas that could get us more jobs, I think can really help Michigan.
Is the climate good in Lansing to move that forward in this?
No, it's kind of mixed right now. We've got the leftist of the lefts and the rightist of the right teaming up to put an end to all that. Those of us in the middle are just kind of scratching our heads, wondering what their ultimate goal is. But I think if you take a look at just in Saginaw alone, I watched this a few years ago. TRW it had a sour contract with General Motors. 300 employees lost their jobs. I was there for the ribbon cutting that repurposed the building they were in. Now those jobs still exist. They just exist in another state. But what we did was we lost all their income tax revenue, their sales tax revenue. They're buying cars in Ohio, not in Michigan. Their sales tax revenue is not going into our schools. Property values, start going down because we have this open market. And most importantly, for a community that depends on its medical community, is that we lost our Blue Cross cards. And we know what happens when you lose 300 jobs. So it would seem to me that you would see that gaining those 300 jobs, those exact 300 jobs again the second time, would act in reverse. We would gain all of those things. And so to talk about corporate cronyism or corporate welfare, this is about getting a business in, establishing great jobs with great paychecks, getting people the opportunity to have disposable income. So we're really working on a sensible plan to restore some of these jobs.
Challenges, yes, but some encouraging news as well, at least on the near and we hope down the road future of things. Thanks as always for coming in to bring us up to date.
It was great to be with you.
Thank you. Our guest has been State Senator Ken Horn of Frankenmuth in the 32nd District. Reminder that this program this week will be seen in its rebroadcast this Sunday at 11:30. You can check the local listings for that. These also all go to our website, WCMU.org, and you can follow the links through TV and to the specific page for Capitol Report. I'm David Nicholas. As always, appreciate your time and attention, and we will talk again soon.